the Truth Attack Hour, and we're coming to you live. Well, I've just got so much I want to run through tonight, so let's just get right into this. We are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the network operating and the broadcast coming. So, if you're not already a supporting member, we sure would appreciate it if you'd find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website and get signed up as a subscribing member, even if it's as little as $10, $20 a month. We need your support to keep the network operating. So, there you go. And if you want to be fully informed on the maladministration and the fraudulent enforcement of the federal income tax by the federal judges, the IRS and the DOJ, you need to find your way over to tax-freedom.com and start reading, or find your way over to the Thomas Freed YouTube channel and start listening to the short videos and the instructional videos I've put out there. Or you can find your way over to irszoom.com and pick yourself up a copy of either The Simple Truth About Income Tax for $4 or the American Tax Bible for $50. We've got the short version and the fully expounded version for anyone who wants to be set free from an education of the truth. And if you know anyone who needs help in answering correspondence from the IRS, send them over to irszoom.com, because that's what we do. For $50 a letter, we answer any piece of correspondence you've received from the IRS and compel them to provide process, real process, which they're trying to short circuit and which they get away with if you don't answer their letters right from the beginning. So, what do we got happening? Okay. We got the two candidates are set, right? Super Tuesday pretty much nailed it down. Officially, it's not done, but you're going to have Trump versus Biden, barring some unforeseen catastrophe, unless the Democrats decide to pull a fast one at their convention in Chicago through the superdelegates, which can swing the Democratic nominee to any person they want at the convention. They're not stuck with what happened in the voting by the people. The Democrat Party is set up so that the elite will ultimately make the choice, not the party members. They're just useful idiots. And this Chicago convention could be wild because the youth have lost. Biden's lost the youth. They don't support him anymore. They are anti-Israel, and he isn't anti-Israel, pro-Hamas enough. And because he doesn't want to offend them, he isn't even trying to get the 6 United States hostages back. People seem to have forgotten. Hamas is still holding 6 Americans as hostage, along with several hundred Israelis. And they're refusing to release the hostages. And even if you call a ceasefire, they may not release all the Israeli hostages, because you've never been able to trust them, because they're the ones who will not accept a two-state solution. Hamas has had autonomous control of Gaza for nearly 20 years. And instead of building an infrastructure and a society, they've stolen every single penny to build underground tunnels underneath the hospitals and schools from which to wage war, terrorist war, on Israel. Enough is enough. Biden should be trying to get the hostages back, not help Hamas with Israel. Total and complete fraud. So, the Chicago Convention could go the wrong way. It could be another 68 convention where the youth who like to go out and peacefully protest, like in all the Black Lives Matter riots, Chicago could be in trouble. We'll have to see how it plays out, right? On the other side, the Republican nominee is pretty set. Trump's going to be there. And tonight, we're going to get to listen to Joe Biden with his State of the Union. And can you guess what he's going to do? Let me tell you, if you don't know. He's going to come out and blame Republicans, Donald Trump, and Congress for everything that's gone wrong. He'll blame Congress for not passing the border security bill, even though this worthless piece of human garbage had a Democrat Congress, had a Democrat House, a Democrat Senate, and he was in the White House for the first 2 years. If he wanted to pass a law for immigration, why didn't he do it then? Why did he stand around for 3 years saying there's no problem, there's no problem, the border's secure, the border's secure? We're addressing it at the source. I put Kamala in charge, everything, and now all of a sudden, it's the Republicans' fault. It's the Republicans. If this man hasn't taken responsibility or accountability or hasn't been held accountable by the mainstream media for one single thing he's done in 3 years in office. Let's review how Joe has done. COVID was a disaster. Trump handed him a vaccine supply and a plan to distribute. And what did Joe do? He tried to make it mandatory. Mandatory, or you lose your job. And then the little petty dictator tyrant fired all the frontline workers. He fired all the frontline workers at the hospitals who had worked for 2 years without vaccine available, put their lines on the line. Many of them caught COVID and recovered, so they had a stronger immunity than the vaccine provided. But the Biden administration didn't recognize that 100-year-old science and fired them. Because as persons refusing to take the vaccine, they must be conservative. And Biden has weaponized the political system and is purging the army and the agencies and even the frontline responders of conservatives and constitutionalists and libertarians who don't want an all-powerful state. So he blew COVID, and of course, over 1 million people died of COVID on his watch. When Trump was running, Biden said, oh, anyone who let 700,000 people die isn't worthy of office. Well, Joe, you did it 150% worse. Still think you should be in office? And of course, it turned out to be wrong to mandate the vaccines because now all sorts of people are having, shall we say, reactions. Lawsuits are in Europe. The companies made billions of dollars. The whole thing was exactly what I told you right from the beginning, an exercise in psychological behavioral control. And how did Joe do with that Afghanistan withdrawal? How'd that work out? We lost 13 men, $1 trillion over a 20-year investment down the drain, 91 billion in weapons and armament handed back to ISIS to sell into the terrorist world to reconstitute the caliphate state in Afghanistan. Joe Biden sent the women of Afghanistan back to the Stone Age. No schools, no driving, no public appearance, fully clothed, can be raped, no charges. Good job, Joe. You sent Afghanistan back to the year 1. Oh, now that's progress for you. There's a military record you can be proud of. And it turns out that the bomber that killed the 13 soldiers in the square at the airport was in the target of a sniper who was requesting permission to pull the trigger to kill the bomber before he struck, and permission never came from an incompetent military leadership running all the way to the White House. And 13 soldiers died because of that incompetence and cowardice. And how's his policy going there with energy? You like paying $4, $5, $6 for gas, $5, $6, $7 for diesel? You like a utility bill 50% higher? You like food 30 to 50% higher, goods 50% higher? You think the city streets are free of crime? Joe Biden has destroyed this country. Every single one of his policies and the Democrat policies are responsible for the violence, the chaos, and the anarchy we see destroying America. The illegal aliens are being registered to vote blue so that they don't lose seats in the Congress or the Electoral College. They're replacing citizens with illegal aliens dependent upon government welfare, who don't speak English, who will destroy the school systems. Because if 1/5 of the kids in the class can't speak English. 4/5 of the kids won't learn a single thing. Won't learn a single thing. And it just came out, Joe transported 300,000 illegal aliens by airline all over the country in violation of Title 8, Section 1324. His policy is a violation of law as a matter of policy. Title 8, Section 1324, I read it before, makes it a crime to harbor, house, transport, aid and abet, or conceal any illegal alien coming into the country. And of course, that's what Joe Biden's policy is to conceal the flights into the interior of the country, to deliver them all over the country. Criminal from the beginning. It's created chaos, and the chaos is now cascading into our streets. And the man who was in charge of the border for the first 2 years says neither Joe Biden or Kamala ever contacted him during his entire term of service as the chief of the 21,000 officer force, supposedly securing the border, but who weren't allowed to secure the border because they were all assigned to keep busy processing illegal aliens. 7 million and counting so far. Give or take 1 or 2 million gotaways that nobody can count. Oh, and how's the war on fentanyl going? 100,000 people a year dead because of Joseph's open border, dead meat Biden. Absolutely insane. This man has a record of destruction everywhere you look. Energy, food, immigration, border, crime, debt, inflation. Oh yeah, that's all Republicans' fault. It's all the Democrats' fault. And guess what the solution is? That's right, New York has started implementing the solution. In New York, Democrat Governor Hochul has deployed the National Guard to the subways. Oh, so their solution to all the crime is to put the AR-15s to guard the people. They don't even want pistols at the schools to guard the students, but her solution is to put AR-15s in the subway. And when Donald Trump wanted to use the National Guard to secure the city, it was, fascist, Nazi state, police state. And here the Democrats have adopted it after creating the crime to engineer the call for more government interference. And you know, I actually don't have a problem with them being in the subway to keep the place secure and respond to crimes that they see being committed. But that's not the role the Democrat governor assigned to them. She assigned to them the Nazi role of violating the Constitution and not only guarding, but searching every single bag illegally coming into the station. It's another exercise in behavioral psychological control. How much can we get away with by instilling fear in the basic population? There should be 1,000 lawsuits filed against this woman tomorrow morning. Violation of civil rights. You don't get to search without a warrant, or at least a probable cause or reasonable suspicion. You don't get to just search every bag. Getting on the subway. You can stand there. You can arrest every criminal who commits a crime in your presence. You can stop every crime that is attempted in your presence. But you can't start strip searching people and demanding to see their papers or ID without cause. So they put the guns on the subway. Isn't that funny? The conservative solution turns out to be what the Democrats want to do. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. I hear that first commercial break coming up. We'll be back in 5. And get signed up at libertyworksradionetwork.com. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. God is the truth, and freedom comes from God, not government. God's true plan for mankind is freedom derived from faith in God. If you misplace your faith in any other entity, it will be used against you. You will be betrayed, and will be enslaved by the entity in whom you erroneously placed your faith in place of God. And that, my friends, is the history of the governments of mankind. Trust the king, not God. Oh, you're a slave to the king. Trust the Pharaoh instead of God. Oh, you're a slave to the Pharaoh. Trust the emperor instead of God. Oh, you're a slave to the emperors. Only God delivers freedom. So, I guess it's old news, 4 days old. Supreme Court, of course, struck down the Colorado ruling that Donald Trump wouldn't be allowed to be on the ballot, and applied it to every other state immediately. And the court, of course, ruled 9-0. 9-0. And the 9-0 ruling exposes just how drunk on liberal Kool-Aid, or absolutely uneducated and stupid, all of the liberal pundits are on the mainstream media. ABC, CBS, NBC, PBS, CNN, MSNBC, they're all yelling and screaming about how this court ruling out of Colorado is unassailable. Unassailable. He absolutely committed an insurrection and can't be on it. It's unassailable. 9-0. An absolutely unassailable position with 9-0. All three liberal justices rejected the stupidity of an argument that one state could decide to remove a candidate from a federal election without any kind of trial or process that included the candidate and his ability to defend or oppose any arguments against him. Talk about Nazi or communist, or both, probably. So the court threw away the unassailable ruling, 9-0. Trump has to be on the ballot in all 50 states, and all the other states with pending suits, it's killed. Which is what's going to happen to all these suits filed against Trump. They're all going to get killed, because they're all made up, novel theories to try and go after political opposition on a mission of persecution, not prosecution of any crime. Meanwhile, the criminals are left free to run wild and run rampant. Even all the way back to January 6th, where you have that guy Ray Epps on 100 videos urging people for 2 days to go into the Capitol, commit the crime. He's right there at the barricades. He's right there at the initial breach, urging, inciting. Oh, they never even charged him until it was pointed out 2.5 years later that they'd never even interviewed him. And then they gave him probation. 20 years for people who weren't there. The guy there who did it, oh, he doesn't get charged. Because he's an FBI plant. It was entrapment. Nancy Pelosi and the FBI set the whole thing up. That's why the National Guard wasn't there. It's the Democrats going Nazi, breaking down law and order and planning to entrap and attack their political opposition at what was a normal protest held at the Capitol by the side that loses an election. Nothing unusual about it, other than the fact that they pulled all the police away and opened up the doors and ushered them in and gave them tours. The whole thing is a fraud. And if the Supreme Court didn't see an insurrection in Donald Trump from the top down, how come anybody is in jail for insurrection on January 6th when none occurred? Because the Democrats have weaponized the Department of Justice in the use of the law. They're not going after criminals. They're allowing criminals where it serves their purpose, i.e. New York, create so much chaos that we can put the National Guard on the streets, turn it into a police state and start searching bags instead of just guarding the subway platforms and scaring the criminals away, or at least scaring them away from committing the crime. So, and I got bad news, folks. Oil's going back up. Price of oil's going up because Biden refuses to turn on the American energy machine, which puts Russia, Iran, and Saudi Arabia in charge of it. And Saudi Arabia is dropping production to up the price. It's back up $80 a barrel, $3.40 a gallon around the country, except in California, gasoline's $4.70. Diesel, of course, is $4.50 to $6, depending upon where you are. And this means none of the prices that are been impacted by fuel costs are going to come down. They're going to stay high, and you're not going to get any more relief from inflation. And in fact, you may see prices go up again. And this is Biden assisting our enemies and punishing the American people because cheap oil helps America. And cheap oil hurts Russia. They can't make enough money to wage war or support their economy if oil is cheap. But when it's expensive, they can afford to wage an artillery battle forever. And Biden doesn't seem to care that he's funding both sides effectively. The Ukrainians with monetary policy and the Russians with energy policy. If you're going to fight a war, take away the weapon. Pump so much oil that the price drops to $45 a barrel and they can't make money to sustain a war effort, neither in Russia nor in Iran. This man either doesn't understand world geopolitics or he is intentionally aligning his policies against the interests of America and with the interests of our enemies. It's policy treason. And of course, cheap oil gives us more leverage with China, who would rather buy from us than Russia off the market. And Iran just sold $90 billion worth of oil last month. What happened to Iranian oil sales being sanctioned by the Biden administration? A record $90 billion. What's being sanctioned? This man puts in place policies and then he's a coward about enforcing them. He just puts words out. His actions tell the story. He does nothing except call a lid on the day at 11 a.m. and take a nap until 4. Then he has to change his diapers. So it's pretty clear he's already put his re-election policy in place, hasn't he? It's the same policy, well, almost the same policy. He's going to be hiding in the basement again. He's not going to come out and debate Trump because he gets slaughtered and look like an idiot. And everybody knows it because the first thing he's going to be confronted with is all the lies he told in the last debate. You told us Hunter didn't make any money. He just testified on Capitol Hill he made a mint. Millions in China, millions in Ukraine. You lied to the American people in the first debate. And, gee, Joe, what do you want to talk about? Inflation? Energy? Crime? Immigration? What do you want to talk about? Oh, the only thing he wants to talk about is the one thing Congress can't write law for anymore. Abortion. That's not a federal issue. If you're voting in a federal election on the issue of abortion, you don't understand what the Supreme Court said. The Supreme Court said this is a state issue. It's going to be decided state by state by state. The federal government can't get involved. The Republicans can't ban it with a law in Congress, and the Democrats can't allow it or fund it with a law in Congress. Both laws from either party would be declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court almost immediately, because if there's no basis in the Constitution for an opinion in the courts, which was Roe v. Wade, then there certainly is no basis in the Constitution for a law from Congress. So before Congress can write a law, they have to amend the Constitution to allow them to do so on this issue. And that ain't ever gonna happen. Because the nation is split 50-50. You could never get a 3/4 majority to approve an amendment. So it's a state issue forever. But along with hiding in the basement and lying about Trump and the Republicans, blaming them for everything that Biden has done for the last 3 years, what Joe is doing is he's buying votes this election. Of course, that's how they won, I think, the 22 election, is by buying the votes of some 15 million students whose debt was unconstitutionally and illegally forgiven by oh slow Joe, communist hoe. He's just buying votes, right? And that's what he's doing with the illegal aliens. They're bringing them in. They're moving to Democrat cities, California, Chicago, Boston, New York, and then they're registering the vote just as fast as they can, claiming, oh, we're only registering the vote in state elections. But, the states conduct the elections from the exact same polling places, whether they're a state election or a federal election. So once you register someone to vote and tell them there's an election, think the illegal aliens are going to know the difference? You think they're going to care when their largesse and welfare depends on keeping the blue in party? The blue party in power, the Democrats? They're bringing in illegal aliens to vote, and they're going to start hiring them to give them money to go out and register register Democrats. The sheets with Republicans on them, those names somehow won't get registered. So when you show up to vote, surprised you're not registered. Can't register the day of the election, you don't get to vote. But all the Democrats who were harvested, their registrations were harvested, they'll be there. They'll get to vote. They're going to use students who they pay to do this, who they've bought. They're going to use illegal aliens to do this, who they've bought, because they need to find some way to give them money before they start robbing everyone in the city and turn the population against the Democrats because of the crime. So they put the National Guard in the subway to control the crime and to intimidate the people by searching them, setting up the police state that the socialists always want in order to control the population right out of the gate. So he's buying votes, he's harvesting votes, and you can bet when it comes time to harvest all the mail-in votes, the illegal aliens and students will be doing that too. So I don't know what to tell you, but it's pretty clear the black population is no longer on the Democrats' priority agenda. The black population in America has been 100% replaced with illegal aliens. They're getting the budget priorities, they're getting the facilities, they're getting the schools, they're getting the parks, they're getting the attention, they're getting the registration, they're getting the housing, they're getting the food, they're getting the credit cards to buy goods. They're being subsidized in their existence while Americans are being thrown into the gutter because the Democrats think you're too drunk on Kool-Aid and anti-Trump rhetoric to ever not vote for the Democrats. Like Joe Biden said, if you don't know who you're going to vote for, then you ain't black. I mean, yeah, right, sure, Joe, check. Did you see what Joe did the other day? There's a video of him stopping at fast food to buy chicken to have with the black family. And he brings the dinner to the house, and they go in and sit down at the table, and he's unpacking the dinner. And he says, when I got everybody fried chicken, but I made sure to get a hamburger for myself. Oh my God. He brings fried chicken for the black family, but he isn't going to eat chicken with them. He brought himself a hamburger. He doesn't understand the optics of that. The only way it could be worse is if he brought watermelon for dessert. Oh my God. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. We're coming up on our commercial break here, so if you're not signed up as a subscribing member, do so. We'll be back in 5. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and let's just get right back into this for the last 15 minutes of the show. Okay, I forgot to mention earlier when I mentioned that we're going to have the State of the Union tonight, and right afterwards, of course, you're going to have the Republican response delivered by, I believe, a Republican female senator. I forget the name, but she's supposed to be young and exciting. So we'll see what she has to say. But Donald Trump, of course, isn't going to let Joe Biden get up there and lie about him for an hour and then let that sit for a night before he responds. He's going to be speaking at 11 o'clock. After they've packed Joe off to bed, Donald's going to come out and speak to the nation at 11 o'clock and respond personally to what Joe Biden says in his speech. So he's not going to have 2 months for speechwriters to write the speech. He's going to listen to Joe, and then he's going to come out and talk to the American people, probably ad hoc and off script with only outline notes. And let's see how he does compared to Joe reading a script from a teleprompter. What do you think? Think he'll read the instructions again? Quote unquote, read it again? Yeah, probably. So anyway, you'll hear from Donald at 11 o'clock. It's probably worth staying up for more than it is watching Joe. Okay, so where are we going? Okay, I wanted to mention something else about the Supreme Court's 9-0 decision. They did something really wild on this case to outwit the liberal, progressive, far left youth radical protest movement. They scheduled on the calendar for Thursday morning to hear the arguments on the Colorado throw Trump off the ballot case. And then they scheduled to issue the decision Thursday afternoon. So they put it on the calendar to hear the arguments Thursday morning and issue the decision Thursday afternoon. No, they never do this. They don't issue decisions on the day that they hear arguments. So this looked really funny. And of course, the court pulled a fast one on everyone. They knew that when they scheduled that stuff for Thursday, there'd be crowds of liberals outside the court to create chaos and havoc and anarchy if they didn't get what they wanted. So the court didn't wait till Thursday. They handed it down on Monday. And there wasn't anybody there. Completely unannounced decision. I wouldn't be surprised if this is how they do it from now on. Of course, they did this because in the preliminary voting, it was 9-0 right out of the gate. Don't need to hear arguments. Nobody wants to hear arguments. Everyone agrees. This is insane and Nazi to control the ballot from small groups in charge of certain liberal states with a certain agenda that happens to be completely 100% anathema to the Constitution and the written law as it stands today. Joe's policies are a criminal violation as a matter of law. Every single one of the Democrat administrators are charged with RICO. It's just... Anyway, okay, so here we go. You see, California has passed a law with an exemption in it, but it raises the minimum wage for fast food restaurants to $20 an hour. And, I think I talked about the exemption for Panera Bread in there, which is a chain of restaurants in San Francisco owned by a billionaire who supports Gavin Newsom. And the carve out is for restaurants that make bread and sell it as a single item. So there are no fast food restaurants that sell loaves of bread except Panera. That's a specifically targeted carve out for Gavin's political supporter. And it's my feeling that $20 an hour at a fast food restaurant, you're getting pretty darn close to the breaking point for profitability for restaurants that are anywhere except in the very busiest and best locations. Everybody else at $20 an hour, you got to pay 5 employees an hour when you only do $30 in business? How many businesses can do that? If you're not in a hot location, fast food becomes an iffy game. And of course, what that means is you'll have 5 or 6 in one place all together, and you won't have anywhere for miles till you get to the next major busy point. It changes the nature of food availability in the country. I think $20 an hour is pretty close to knocking out the competition, and good luck selling the fast food location that you're closing because you can't afford to operate anymore. Oh, wait a minute, that's right. Did I forget? There will be one buyer, Panera. It won't be Taco Bell that wins the food wars. It will be Panera in California. Oh dear. Oh dear. Okay, so what else do we got? Well, let's take a look. Got 10 minutes. Joe Biden, in my opinion, he's dead meat. He is dead meat in this upcoming election. He's saddled with a VP candidate that scares the American people more than he does. So, you have an incompetent administration, and the absolute only way these people can get reelected is to cheat, try and steal the election, just like they did last time. And the mainstream media is just making this stuff up. They're trying to depict Donald Trump coming out of the primary cycle here against Nikki Haley, who he absolutely, completely devastated. She, won one state, Vermont, and the District of Columbia, a Democratic city where there are no Republican voters. Oh, that's wonderful. There's a coalition you can bank on. So Trump slaughtered the opposition. Nobody else even bothered to try. They all gave up and walked away. But the mainstream media portrays him as wounded and limping into the election now. And how do they describe Joe Biden? Well, they didn't, but let me describe it for you. He's dead and being carried. He's dead and being carried. He's afraid to speak. He's afraid to confront reporters. He's afraid to take a question. He's afraid he'll get in trouble with his staff. He's afraid he'll provoke Putin. He's afraid he'll provoke Iran and won't get his nuclear treaty that gives them a bomb. He's afraid to come out of the basement. And he's incompetent. And he has a group of pathological liars serving in his cabinet. If you believe anything that liar Mayorkas has said in the last 3 years, you're either, I don't know, you have to be an idiot. There's no either. You just have to be an idiot. I guess you could be blind and deaf. So my apologies to anyone who's blind and deaf. You're listening to the show. Okay, so like I said, they're going to try and register as many illegal aliens and then push them to vote. This needs to be prevented. They're also going to try and pull the same stunt with the mail-in votes. And, mail-in votes, you have to allow them, but they should be by request only. A registered voter has to make a specific request for the ballot to be mailed. It goes to their house, one ballot. They fill it out and send it back by a certain time before the election so that it can be counted by the day of the election. And if any laws are to be changed about how ballots shall be collected or counted, those changes need to come from the state legislature, not a governor, not a judge, not an unelected Democrat official using something like COVID or the National Guard in the subway as an excuse to count ballots collected and counted after the law provides for, which is what they did. And of course, they didn't bother to match up votes with registered voters to ensure they were actually registered voters, not people who had moved or died or had never registered to vote at all, or didn't sign, or didn't have a residential address in the state, or whose ballot somehow showed up without ever being folded inside of an envelope from the United States mail. Well, how did this get here? What did it arrive in? Oh, we just found them over there. Surprise! They weren't mailed. So that's the plan. If you care about America, you need to be part of the organizations that are going to try and stay on top of this. They need to be supported so that they can do this, because there are groups who will go to the polls and watch and pay attention at the ballot boxes during harvesting time, but they need to be supported. Otherwise, there won't be enough of them, and they won't be able to afford what has to be done to try and hold that kind of criminality in check. So, and we've talked about part of the plan in taking over and socializing the country is, of course, is to control the curriculum in the public schools, which is, of course, the 10th plank of the Communist Manifesto. Public schools and a centralized curriculum. Not one controlled by the states, but one controlled by the federal government. And the schools, particularly in the inner city areas, have become so bad now that in Baltimore, in the public school system in Baltimore, not one single student tested at grade level in math between the grades of 6 and 12. Not one student. And most of them couldn't read at grade level either. Your children aren't being educated, they're being indoctrinated so that they are suitable to function as slaves, but not educated persons. And this, of course, is the plan. The socialist government doesn't want educated persons, it wants obedient persons. But an educated person says, hey, look at what technology has done. We can do that thing you were doing that took a month and $10 million. We can now do it in 15 seconds for 10 cents. Why don't we do it better? Instead of keeping the VA records on paper, why don't we put them in a computer? Instead of just passing out Social Security like an entitlement, why don't we test the means of the persons that are getting the benefits to see if they need the money or not? And then if they don't need it, why don't we send it to the people that do need it instead of the people that don't? It's already in the computer. You could do this tomorrow to save Social Security and actually start providing a meaningful benefit to the poor who need it, instead of allowing the bulk of the benefit funds to be completely consumed by an upper middle class that doesn't need a dime, but is living off the government anyway, because it's an entitlement. It's not a tax program for the poor, it's an entitlement. Baloney, it's a tax. You're wealthy, you shouldn't get a dime. Why is your government trying to send Social Security benefits to Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, and all the others? Why? They shouldn't be eligible for a penny. They have multi-billion-dollar worth. Why is your government trying to give them Social Security funds? You don't see the insanity in that? You don't understand that you have to means test this program? It's a Ponzi pyramid. It's not going to last another 10 years unless you correct the error of your ways and stop allowing the Democrats to use it to buy votes from the elderly. You either have to be sane with this policy or you're going to bankrupt your nation. As goes the currency, so goes the fate of the nation. This is unsustainable. GDP goes up 600 billion and the debt goes up 1.4 trillion. They're buying GDP with debt. That's not progress. That's oblivion. That's the path to oblivion. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. We'll be back next week with more. If you're not a subscribing member, please work your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website, get signed up, and find your way over to the tax-freedom.com website and start reading if you like what you hear and you want to hear more.